What's good, everybody? In this video I'm going to show y'all how Metro Boomin makes beats for Travis Scott, specifically the ambient outro type of vibe that he has on the song Till Further Notice. Per usual, I made this beat from scratch, so I'm going to show y'all the entire process of making it. And with all that being said, let's jump right into the sample. So jumping into the first sound, I got this spinning Rhodes preset from Kavi's Retro Dreams Analog Lab Bank. So I started with a tempo of 162 beats per minute. Overall, the pattern's not super complicated, and I'll try my best to explain the concept behind it. So I originally got this chord progression from somebody else's video breaking down the chord progression from Fair Trade. I think most of the notes are pretty similar to that chord progression, but I changed the key and played around with the bass notes a little bit. As for the actual key behind it is the G sharp major scale, but the sixth note of the scale, F, is down a half step to E. So putting this in context with the rest of the melodies, you can see pretty much all the notes fall in the scale except for this first chord here where I have an accidental. So if I bring all these bass notes up, the chords will make a little more sense. Starting off with the first chord here, I have an E major 7 chord, or in other words, you place down one note, move the next note 4 half steps up, and move that middle note 3 half steps up, and then this top note is the next scale degree below your root note, so in this case it's D sharp. Once you have that, I just put down the E 1 octave. Moving on to the second chord, it's pretty much the same concept where you have a D sharp major chord. Instead of the 7th note being the top note, we just have an octave of the root note, and once again dropping that bottom note an octave. The next chord's pretty much identical. The only difference is we're dropping the octave down to the 7th note, which again is 1 scale degree below the root note in the scale. So if I move this D up 1 octave, we can see 1 note down in the scale is C sharp. Now moving on to the last note, this one's significantly different than the other ones. So the bottom part of the chord is a C sharp minor chord. Pretty much you start with the C sharp in the scale and then just construct the chord by skipping each note in the scale and placing a note, so the 1st, 3rd, and 5th note relative to C sharp. And to create a suspended chord type of vibe, put in an octave of the 2nd note of the scale relative to this chord. So if I bring this down an octave, this would be the 1st note in the scale for this chord, and relative to that, this would be the 2nd note. So again, bring that an octave up and take that bottom note and drop it an octave. Overall, this is what the first Rhodes pattern sounds like. For effects on the Rhodes piano, I just have a low roll-off for an EQ, just to cut down the bass a little bit and make some room for other sounds. And in the mixer track, I moved the stereo separation to 72% using this knob right here. Moving on to the second melodic sound, I got this pad preset from the Opia Bank in Analog Lab. And for this pattern, I literally just copied and pasted the notes from the first pattern. This pretty much just layers on top of the first melody, give it some more depth and just accent whatever we got. For effects, I put on an EQ and rolled off the lows and highs and put a dip in the mids. For my next melodic sound, I got this pad from my upcoming multi-kit, which sounds something like this. And a quick tip for using one-shots, especially for more ambient one-shots, you can go into the envelope and turn everything down, turn the sustain all the way up, and adjust the release to your liking. This way the note will stop being played as soon as it ends in the piano roll. By adjusting the release, you can allow it to bring out a little more naturally. For this pattern, I also laid down some chords, and you might notice it looks a little bit different from the previous two patterns. So comparing it with this pattern, it's a slightly modified version of this. All I did is I took these bass notes and pitched them up an octave. I deleted these top notes and then just extended these chords down here, and I also took out this note in the 3rd chord. For the effects, once again, I'm rolling off the lows in the EQ. Then I put some RC20 on the Lush and Crunch Guitar 2 preset, and I turned off the noise and lowered the distortion and wobble down. This just gives it an analog vintage type of feel to it. Next, I opened up Serum, and I got this Bell preset, which is also going to be in the upcoming multi-kit. And for this, I put in a super simple counter melody. I didn't do anything too special with it. I just wanted it to kind of accent and fill out the sound a little bit more. So I'll play this in context with the first melodic pattern. For effects on the bell, I just put down some reverb with these settings, and I put on some flanges on the stereoize preset and turn the mix level down to 25%. After the serum bell, I put down a lead, which once again is a one shot from my upcoming multi-kit. So with this, I pretty much just use the relative fifth note in the scale to the bass notes. So putting the bass notes in, all you do to make it the fifth is just copy them up 7 half steps. For effects, I put on some Portal on the wave preset from the Wave Scrape 1.5, and the final melodic sound to finish the sample was a bass, which like the last few sounds is also from the upcoming multi-kit. And with this, I just copied the bass notes from the first pattern. So once I had the sample done, I arranged it, rendered it out as a full loop. Then I dropped it into my drums template and I put the drums down and finished the rest of the beat. So when I originally dropped the sample into the playlist, I set the project tempo to 162 and I opened up the audio menu and set the mode to stretch, and then I pitched it down by 500 cents. Once I had that down, I got started on my drums, and similar to the last few melodic sounds, all these drums are going to be included in the upcoming multi-kit. So the first sound I put down was the snare, and I put this down on the third beat of every measure. I threw one snare on this off beat here on the fourth measure and lowered the velocity just to add a little bounce to it. Then I threw down this hi-hat sound, and I put down some hi-hats using some staggered velocities, and I put in these 2 lower rolls here using the 1/2 step snapping, and then these 2 rolls are using the 1/6 beat snap to grid. And for the verses, I also made a simplified version of the hi-hat pattern where I deleted all the rolls and just kept this 1/6 beat roll. To further establish the bounce, I put down this kick sound, and I put down this pattern which guides the bounce for the rest of the drums. Next, I throw in this open hat, which pretty much accents the hi-hats and the kick. And moving on to the final drum sound, which is the 808, and then I put down this bass pattern, which is actually pretty different from the bass notes of the sub bass. Usually I keep it the same, but for this beat I wanted to switch it up a little bit. Even with this 808 pattern, you can see the overall simplicity in the drums, and to be honest, I didn't feel like adding a bunch of unnecessary snare or perk patterns. So putting all the pieces together, this is what the final beat sounds like. So that's gonna do it. Hope y'all enjoyed it and you were able to take something away from it. Thank you for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Like I've already said about 5 or 6 times in the video, I have a multi-kit that I'm hoping I can drop within the next 3 to 4 weeks. So stay tuned for that. And that's gonna do it for this one. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.